So like and subscribe if you want to. This was a move that I think nobody saw coming. Montrezl has signed to the Lakers for 2 years, $19 million, with the second season being a player option. I mean, we thought that Montrezl's market was going to be a kind of rough, and it clearly was, because I'm pretty sure the Lakers just got him for their mid-level. I mean, you're talking about a guy who at one time we were talking about, maybe a team like the Hornets is going to give him a big offer, or whoever else, maybe the Pistons or whatever. Those teams have done whatever they want to do, although the Hornets technically have some money left. But the Lakers, they got him. The Lakers got him. We thought the Lakers could have used their mid-level on like Serge Ibaka. We'll have to see where he goes. But the Lakers got themselves a guy who is hopefully not what we saw against Denver, and more so what we saw in the regular season for the Clippers. One of the best scorers in the league around the basket. One of the best rollers to the basket, and a guy who's just going to play really hard and grab offensive rebounds and do that whole thing, right? Now, defensively, I think there's always going to be some fear with Montrezl, but you would hope with AD there, and we're imagining them sharing minutes together, and with just how good defensively we think the Lakers can hopefully still be. We're going to have to see what the roster looks like by the end of free agency, that they could, not get killed because of Montrezl's defense. We know that AD doesn't want to start at center. He's fine with playing center, but he doesn't want to go whole regular season playing the 5. Now, they did bring back JaVale McGee, so maybe that's still going to be the starting lineup, and we're going to see Montrezl. Of course, Montrezl is used to that, as he was the quote-unquote sixth man for the Clippers, but he played like 35 minutes a game most of the time. So perhaps it could be a similar thing in that sense, where JaVale gets his like 5-minute starts at the beginning of the first and third, and then Montrezl comes in there the rest of the way. Could the spacing be awkward with AD and Montrezl? To be honest, I don't think so. I think AD and Montrezl are skilled enough, assuming Montrezl is back to, regular season Montrezl, not Denver series Montrezl, to where, yeah, he can't really shoot like that, but he's got the handle and the finishing skills, and then AD, of course, can shoot, and he could do everything. He's Anthony Davis. We just saw this in the playoffs. So I think those two together can work. And again, defensively, I would imagine that he's not going to kill them. Now, I think teams can focus on Montrezl at times, certainly, and that's a bit of a fear. But at the same time, the Lakers gave him a mid-level. It's not as if they gave him some big contract and they're not going to be able to play him in some games. So we're going to have to see with that one. It'll still be rough if he's, a defensive liability for them at times. The next thing you got to think about is, of course, the LeBron-Montrezl two-man game. Is there going to be one? I mean, teams already switched the LeBron-AD pick and roll because they just don't want to give AD that role whatsoever. Could be a similar thing with Montrezl, but this also gives LeBron another guy that he can mismatch hunt on, because now if there's going to be two guys who LeBron can get that switch onto a big with, then you might just be more screwed. You know what I mean? How is Montrezl going to work off of like Anthony Davis post-ups? I think he could be effective, because I think one thing we saw in the playoffs is when the Lakers had a bunch of shooters around AD, teams were playing zone defense, and I feel like at times it was kind of effective in terms of clogging up passing lanes. Now, AD was so good that it didn't end up mattering, but I feel like Montrezl will give them a guy who can kind of be around the dunker spot, which is going to force a defender to stick to him. And then at that point, it's a little tougher to run that zone defense around the perimeter. So I feel like that's going to be good. I feel like when AD is in the post, Montrezl is going to be a lob threat. We'll see how good of a passer AD is to get those sorts of plays off to Montrezl, but I feel like there can be some success there, certainly. I also think about how Dennis Schroeder and Montrezl can coexist. Can it be similar to how Lou Williams and Montrezl have played off of each other? I think so. I don't know if Schroeder is as good as regular season Lou Will. Hopefully better than playoff Lou Will, because playoff Lou Will is not a good player. So, yeah, I think it can work, man. I mean, I think the Lakers proved a year ago, I mean, they had centers out there who had no handle and no shooting and could only finish pretty simple alley-oop plays and stuff in JaVale and Dwight, and they were playing next to AD. And now you're taking a way more skilled player and putting him there. Granted, Montrezl not as good defensively as Dwight and that sort of thing, I get it. But the offensive upside is there. And for a team that did struggle at times offensively, I think this is good. Now, in terms of the future for this contract, I'm assuming it's just going to be a one-year thing. I mean, it's a player option in the second season. I don't see a scenario in which Montrez would accept that player option unless he doesn't have a good year. Maybe he gets hurt or something, but you just have to assume this is a one-year thing. But for a one-year thing, it's a pretty damn good acquisition for the Lakers. I don't think anybody projected, one, Montrez's market to be this low, or two, them to pick him up. And you think about this now with the Lakers and how their roster is rounding out. I mean, it's Schroeder, it's Montrez, two guys who put up, 16, 17 points a game previous year. They signed Wesley Matthews, solid enough 3-and-D guy. We'll see if Wesley's still got it on defense. I figure he can still make open threes. We'll see what happens with KCP and Avery Bradley. They still have Caruso. They still have Kuzma. There was some rumor about them wanting Bogdan. The only way that could happen would be, I'm pretty sure, through a sign and trade. I don't think the Lakers have a crap ton of cap space because of AD's cap hold, but maybe they do. I really have no idea how much cap space the Lakers have right now. It's so many players are up in the air for them. And of course, they just use their mid-level. At least I'm pretty sure it's the mid-level. The other thing to think about now is the impact this has on the Clippers. I mean, they don't have Montrez anymore. As far as the regular season, that's not good for them. Based on what we saw in the playoffs, it could be great for them. There's not going to be as much competition at the center position, and Zubats was at times better than Montrez. Certainly a better fundamental player, more reliable, even if he's not as good offensively. And perhaps this opens the door for something with the Clippers. I imagine they've got to have some sort of an exception they can use. I mean, according to Basketball Reference, they're at $115 million, which would give them the mid-level. So we'll see if they do something there. Whether it's bring back Marcus Morris. I remember JaMychal Green did he decline his player option? I think he might have earlier. Even if he accepts it, they still have the money to make at least somewhat of a move. So we'll see if the Clippers can recover off of losing Montrez. We'll see if they don't even view losing Montrez as that big of a deal. But he was certainly a piece for them in the regular season. They did do the Kennard move, which maybe I end up doing a video on that one. I don't know. So many things are happening. I think some things are just going to have to get pushed to the wayside. Montrez is a Laker. And then we think about for Montrez's future after this season, assuming he declines the player option, he enters the big free agency where there's so many teams with cap space and there's a whole lot of free agents, and we'll see how he competes in that market. But as far as this season is concerned, we're going to have to see. Is he back to regular season, high energy, great inside scorer Montrez, or is it Denver series, defensive liability, can't even really do much on offense either Montrez? It's all going to be a wait and see. So anyway, like and subscribe if you want to, and that's it.